The Rito originated from Wind Waker and went from a warm island climate to a cold mountain range. And the species has evolved from a more duck-looking, pointed ear species to a large, more eagle-like, non-pointed-eared and archer species. Today, I'm going over how the Rito's history, evolution, connection to the Wind Waker, and way of living is way more important than you realize. First, we got to understand the timeline configuration. After Ocarina of Time, the timeline splits into three: the child timeline, the adult timeline, and the downfall timeline. The Rito only exists in the adult timeline, where the hero does not exist and Princess Zelda is alone in the present, while Link, the hero, is in the past. Our main focus is the adult timeline, but the other two are important for our understanding. Death Mountain exists in all three timelines. In the downfall, it's Ganon's lair. In the child timeline, it's the home of the Gorons. In the adult timeline, it is the home to the Rito. When the timelines connect, Ganon is dead, so he doesn't remain in Death Mountain. Gorons live in the mountain, suggesting the Gorons from the child timeline are still present. And if you have seen my Hyrule Village Mystery video from 9 months ago, you know that the islands drift in the sea due to Hyrule's tectonic plates. But Death Mountain is so stiff it stays in place. Since Hyrule becomes normal again, unflooded from the timeline connection, it is still a burning volcano from the other two timelines. But yes, there is still the flood in the Wind Waker, because as we can see around Hyrule is the ocean, and that ocean isn't present in the other two timelines. Back to the Rito. Since it's still a burning volcano, its heat is incredible, and feathers can't stand extreme heat, so they will have to flee to a better condition for them, and enter Hebra Mountains. They are perfect climate for them, and their feathers keep them from freezing in the cold. In fact, the modern Rito have the ability to fly themselves way high up in the sky, where Link needs double cold resistance clothes to stand the cold. The Rito's ability to be extremely durable to extreme cold is very important to Link's victory in Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. The Rito have actually evolved 3 times, and one is very surprising. The Rito originate from the Zora species due to Hyrule's flooding. But aren't they fish people? Why did they need to evolve into a bird species and not live in the water? Well, the goddess created the water, and in the water, it was very unnatural for the species, and they had to evolve into the Rito or else they would die. And they then thrived as the Rito species on Death Mountain, but they renamed it to Dragon Roost Island. And since evolution takes a long time, we can see some comparisons between the very early Rito and Zora. First, the Zora are the Sea Zora from Ocarina of Time, which like normal people have genetic mutations. Most of Zora have no pointed ears, but we do see that the Princess Rito of the Zora has pointed ears. So that means Rito mates with another Zora, and their children have pointed ears. And they made pointed ears very common in the Zora race, as we can see them in the early Rito. Also, the shape of their bodies seem to be just like the Zoras, just without the fins, unlike Breath of the Wild, which are completely different. Another important fact to remember is that Medli meets up with the Zora Sage, when she then says that they are related. But also Zoras exist along the Rito in Breath of the Wild. How is that possible? Well, there are no Zoras left in the adult timeline, but the Zoras still exist in the child and downfall timeline. The Zoras actually are one of the child timeline's most thriving species in all of Hyrule, populating a huge amount. Compared to the downfall timeline, the Zoras in the downfall timeline and the Zora Rito evolved from the Sea Zora, the beautiful, majestic species, unlike these fellas in the downfall timeline. What you're looking at is a River Zora, a hideous, savage species. Did his Sea Zora mate with a radioactive dying salmon to make this thing? I don't know, but the Sea Zora still exists in this timeline. Very few though, as we can see Zora in Echoes of Wisdom, and this was given a canon timeline placement, which is after Triforce Heroes and before The Legend of Zelda. The Zora and the River Zora always disagree until they actually like each other. But I guess the River Zora got mad again because we can see them as a foe in The Legend of Zelda. But the Zora still exist in a small amount, making them still alive in 2 other timelines. But back to the River Zora for a brief second, because it will help us understand more about the Rito. The River Zora are not present in Breath of the Wild, even though they're in the Downfall timeline, and the Downfall timeline is in Breath of the Wild. The River Zora has found themselves a better home than Hyrule. Maybe they found a better home in New Hyrule or possibly Hytopia. But they no longer have a home in the old Hyrule. Or here's a suggested theory. Since they are enemies in The Legend of Zelda, they might have been hunted down and killed off by the Hylians. But I do not subscribe to this theory because, as we can see at the end of Echoes of Wisdom, we can see that the Zora becomes friends with the River Zora. And if the Hylians ever threaten the River Zora, there's a huge chance the Zora would team up with the River Zora and break out into war with the Hylians, causing a civil war. The Zora are so skilled, they could kill off all the Hylians in this war. So that makes this theory highly unlikely. But back to what I was saying, the River Zora migrated to a different place. But in Tears, we can see that Yona and her literal crew are a different species of Zora. And even though they look alike, they are from a different kingdom. So she had moved to Hyrule to marry Sidon, a different species. This understanding of different species also had to do with the Rito. We have all met Pen and Cass. Pen looks like a pelican, not a hawk or an eagle, like the Hyrule species. And Cass looks like a macaw. Yet again, a different species. We already know that Cass mated with the female Hylian Rito, had 5 baby Rito. But we do see that their kids don't look a lot like Cass, indicating they didn't get much genes from him. But they got a lot from their mother because all 5 are female and Hylian. Not any of Cass's breed, but we do see that they have a strong love for music just like their dad. No, I do not believe that Cass is dead in Tears of the Kingdom. I believe he's on a world tour across the entirety of Hyrule, maybe in Hytopia or something. Also, the Rito have been faced with a lot of issues for a long time. First, in Wind Waker and Tears of the Kingdom, the bridge structure is not the best, because when a threat or a strong storm comes, the bridge does not stand firm. It actually tends to snap. No problem for them, they can just fly, but in both games, when it snaps, a poor Hylian citizen has a job interview and can't get across. Also, Ganondorf had the same old trick thrown at them twice, being a very long and wormy creature. This guy messed up their living style and causes huge problems. In Wind Waker, the big threat is a wormy creature called Malgera, a sand-crawling threat, and it causes huge problems. And in Tears, the same idea is around, a long wormy creature that flies above, and once again, a threat. Ganondorf did his homework, and he knows that the Rito, a good archers, and a big creepy crawler creature that had an exoskeleton would be hard for their main use of weaponry, a bow, to take it down. So anytime there's a huge issue in Hyrule, he just sends out a big worm. Also, the Rito have poor vision at night, and I think I have an explanation. If you ever been to a beach, you know the sun is making the sand glow, and it's very bright. And it also glimmers off the water, which is also bright. So the goddess made it easy for the Rito's eyes when they live on a beach. But the goddess didn't really think to give them night vision. So when they had to flee to a more tucked away shadowy area, which often snows blocking the stars at night, their eyes weren't meant for that. So when Revali goes to fight Thunderblight Ganon at night, his poor vision fails and he dies. So boom, make a worm on a Rito bridge at night, and you're gonna take the Rito down easy. Even though I just listed their weaknesses and possibly made them look weak, Trust me, they are not. If a Hyrulean civil war breaks out, they are winning. I'm also asked the question a lot. If you could be any Zelda race, what would it be? Every time I say the Rito, because it would just be so fun to be one. You're very powerful, and you could be hot like Rivali.
Hey yo, what the?
The Rito are insane archers. They created all types of arrows, which means they probably made the ancient arrow. And if you play Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom, you know that this thing is goated. It is so goated that after Breath of the Wild, the Sheikah tech was destroyed because they were horrified of destruction the tech did and didn't want to risk a third calamity. But they decided to keep the ancient arrows and pretty much nothing else. But back to the Rito. These birds are insane. They just snipe any foe in the way. And Tulin, I think we thanked him so many times for sniping a silver Lionel in the face. It is so helpful and funny. They do have many swords and some spears, but they don't really use them. I've seen one guy holding a spear. It's mostly bows. These guys are like a whole race of Hawkeyes, and Rivali is pretty much Hawkeye, but useful. The main income is arrows that they sell to other villages. And where would Link be without his paraglider? Still stuck on the Great Plateau, too scared to jump off the wall. The Rito are manufacturers of the paraglider, and we can see their emblem on the paraglider. And they're such experts on the flying, it works so good for Link. Just like real birds. Rito are incredibly smart. When they came from the Zora race, they adapted so fast due to their high IQ. Also, like I was saying, their craftsmanship is on point. If it wasn't for the Rito, the bows would not be as good. We can see that bows before and during Ocarina of Time, the Child Timeline and the Downfall Timeline have one thing in common. They all suck. But in Breath of the Wild, their craftsmanship of the bows, arrows, and paraglider are amazing. The Rito are the smartest race in Hyrule, and we all know it. Their adapting skills are really good. Soon, maybe in a couple hundred years, the Rito will have good eyesight in the dark. The Rito's intelligence is mostly what keeps them alive. These guys are one of the top 7 races that live in Hyrule. Others being the Gerudo, Goron, Hylians, Sheikah, Zora, and the Koroks. At the time of Wind Waker, only Koroks and Hylians, and a very, very, very small amount of Gorons. But the Rito really like to respect their ancestry. Like Medli, Wind Waker's Link's friend. She turns out to be the Sage of Earth. And when the Rito are gifted a divine beast, they name it Divine Beast Va Meadow. They name it Meadow after Medli. In fact, all of the races do this. But they still live up high onto a cliff. Like in Wind Waker, they are still mounted onto a cliffside. They also still have a chief of the tribe. And the theme, even though it kinda differs, is the same as Dragon Roost. Also, Calgara's theme differs just slightly from Malgara's. Also, in Calgara's theme, we could hear the theme of the Rito. Even though originally, Rivali was very ignorant towards Link.
I'm so sorry, beautiful. I want this to be gentle. Who is your dialect coach? The Minions?
The tribe really respects Link because thousands and thousands of years earlier, Link from Wind Waker saved the tribe. He knows that Link will do it again. I know that I've been talking a lot about how important Wind Waker is to Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. And even though this is a Rito related video, I think it will be important to talk about Wind Waker for a moment. Wind Waker is surprisingly very, very important to Breath of the Wild, even though it doesn't look like it at all. The art style in the Wind Waker is a cartoon style, unlike Breath of the Wild being a more anime style. They're very different, but both games are cel-shaded. That's just the art style. But this is story-wise. First, all of the Rito. The Rito come from Wind Waker. Like I said countless times. But there's more than that. The ocean around Hyrule, from the flood in Wind Waker, and the rock salt is formed from the sea from its description. And the ore deposits around Hyrule are also formed from the Great Sea. Let's not forget Lurelin Village is just Outset Island. Basically, Outset Island moves to the bottom left to the bottom right over thousands of years. People settle there, probably the Pharaon Zonai tribe, not the Tears of the Kingdom kind, the barbaric kind. And it's renamed Lurelin. If you want to know more info about this, go check out my Lurelin Village mystery video. I am planning to update that one and a whole series of more Zelda theories. If you have any, please tell me in the comments. Or if you're just commenting to be positive, either way. Thank you, I really appreciate it. But back to the video. Due to the timeline conversion, the world of Hyrule looks nothing like the ones that we see from the past games. And it's because it's a world of 3 timelines squished into one. So yes, there could be 2 of some things, and it can be very confusing, and this will blow your mind, but there's 2 Hyrules in Breath of the Wild. The world we walk on, and the depths. The depths are Ocarina of Time's map, but all inverted due to the Wind Waker's flood squishing it down, and a new world forming over it. I'm not completely sure on this theory though, because of Nintendo's official timeline placements and stuff. But let's be honest, Nintendo doesn't care about the timeline. But my main point is that Wind Waker is still extremely important to Breath of the Wild. Back to the Rito. The Rito are one of the goddess's most important races, and there is quite a few races in Hyrule. The goddess trusts one of her secret stones with the Rito race, and also grants a Rito girl and a Rito boy sage abilities that only they have. Even though the Rito have only appeared in 3 games at this point, I bet they will be in a lot more because they are very important to the timeline. Thank you very much for watching. This took a very long time to make. I really appreciate it if you watched it to this long. It truly means a lot. Goodbye, and may the goddess smile upon you.